Hello, gentles and ladymen. I'm Ulan Gaming, and I'm bringing you my second ever build order guide for Malta. In today's video, we will be going over my Malta trade post boom, a strategy all about taking map control, maintaining it, and pressuring your enemy from the very beginning of the game. This strategy is not for the faint of heart. If you can't manage both your economy and troops at the same time in the early game where every move is important, this may not be the strategy for you. But for those of you who want a brawler strategy that fights from the moment you hit H2 and maintains a solid economy over a wide area of the map, this strategy is exactly what you're looking for. The skeleton for this strategy is much more simple than many of my other build orders I have guides for on the channel. Whereas several of my other build orders require bizarre and tight orders in order to attain a specific win condition, this strategy is as simple and skeleton as get trade posts, get units, fight till you win. I've been slowly understanding that Malta build orders require more flexibility and open-ended nature in them compared to USA, which sometimes feels like all of your strategies have to be extremely tight and hardly deviate in order to achieve a specific win condition. Neither of these two are worse or better than the other, but it does mean I have needed to design many of my build orders much more differently than I normally do. Let's talk about our military. Our primary unit we will be massing is the Sentinel. This may surprise a lot of you, who probably don't put much stock in the Sentinel, with it being rather pop inefficient. But not only are Sentinels perfect for trade post boom and synergize incredibly well with the playstyle, but this game will show you exactly why you are underestimating this very solid unit. The Sentinel has standard Musketeer HP and range attack, but it has high hand damage for a Musketeer, but it costs 2 population. However, this is only on the surface level for the Sentinel. As everyone knows, the Sentinel gains an aura boost around friendly buildings, and is higher around fortifications and town centers. To be exact, it provides 7.5% boost HP and attack around buildings, and it's upgraded to 15 around fortifications and town centers. This aura allows Sentinels to beat Sepoy and Ashigaru pretty much right away in the beginning of the game without any upgrade cards, all while costing only 100 resources. Additionally, what's important about Sentinels is that this aura boost is based on their current stats rather than base stats, meaning it scales with every single other upgrade given to them. With the supremely upgradable nature of Sentinels, they quickly outpace other Musketeers in H2 thanks to the Malta HP bonus from each card, and they scale especially well starting in H3 once you can get both Veterancy and Malta Infantry combat. Additionally, Sentinels being able to construct outposts is a huge boon for this strategy, as you can reinforce your trade posts with outposts, which not only protects them, but allows you to use Sentinels, the Sentinel building aura aggressively to take map control away from your opponent and force them into their base. As such, Sentinels synergize incredibly well with trade post booming by being a unit all about map control with a strategy that relies on your ability to quickly take map control. I have really enjoyed the Sentinel, and after the recent buff, I feel it's in a very good place balance-wise, and maybe only needs a slight buff, but nothing severe or big. It's still very serviceable and a powerhouse if you build around it. It's a unit that's designed to be resource efficient instead of population efficient, and that's a cool concept that I think people are just taking a while to get used to. But give them a shot. You'll be pleasantly surprised. They are the best Musketeers in the game in terms of resource cost to stat, and even beat British Musketeers by a notable margin after upgrades. But I digress. Let's get back to the build. The footage you'll see in today's video is not the cleanest I have played, but I thought it was a good game to show the capabilities of the strategy, and that you can absolutely come back from big mistakes. Throughout the game, I made several economic and micro mistakes that I paid for dearly, and was pressured and challenged for trade route control most of the game, but still managed to pull out a good victory. This game, I used a build that normally dominates in resources gathered, and due to several mistakes in my opponent's competency, ended in me losing half my vills at one point and finishing with the least resources gathered. And yet through the resource efficiency of the Sentinel, not the pop efficiency, and good communication with my ally, we still came out on top. When doing a trade post boom, it's obviously vitally important that you get a good map for trade posts. Ideally, you want a trade route that goes through the middle of the map and has no posts in anybody's base that are too close to their town center for you to build on. If you're looking to practice this strategy, New England, or the map in the footage, Saxony, are great maps to use. Last note before we get into the strategy itself, this strategy is viable for both 1v1 and team games. However, you may want to pick another strategy in 1v1 specifically if you suspect your opponent is going to mass a skirm-type unit in Age 2. This is a Musketeer start. As such, you obviously don't want to throw Musketeers into somebody spamming skirmishers. So that's just a herp-to-derp moment. You want to brawl with other Musketeer starts or cavalry starts over skirmishers. In team games, do what you want. You know, I do this a lot in team games, pretty much regardless of what the enemies are, because so long as you can communicate with your ally to make sure they cover your bases, then you'll be fine. It is important to know, however, that you are limited in the units you're able to use for a while with Malta, and this is regardless of any strategy you do. It's difficult and expensive to get more than one type of production building with any early game strategy with Malta. No matter what type of strategy you do, you're pretty much either going to have just a hospital, commandery, or artillery foundry, and it's going to be very difficult and expensive to get more than just one of those. As such, it's vitally important, in 1v1s especially, that you consider what your opponent will mass first. In team games, you'll have a little bit more leeway, because as long as you're communicating with your ally and both of you are on the same page and have good unit diversity. Now, with all that out of the way, let's start from the beginning. To start, queue your first villager and collect the wood crates as soon as possible while your hero runs to the nearest trade line site. Build your trade post and set 5 vills to chop while your other vills herd animals in. As we are opting for a trade post start instead of the standard 3 church start I normally advocate for with Malta, we need to chop 100 wood instead of 50 so we can get a house. As such, we will be sending 3 villagers as our first card instead of the churches, so we can make up for those lost villager seconds and age up at a reasonable time. We'll be aging at 3 minutes and 10 seconds, roughly, with 16 villagers and the quartermaster for 400 wood. Starting during transition, things are going to move very quickly, so pay close attention, because it's a lot. Either right before or after you start aging, you'll get your second shipment. It's going to be Merchant Republics. This grants you 25% of everything your trade posts have attained so far, and boosts all trade post benefits by 33% from now on. The moment you start aging, you also need to set 3 to coin, 8 to wood, and 5 to food. Move your hero over to the next trading post, just preemptively. Once you mine 100 coin, totaling 200 with your starting crates, move 1 to food, 1 to wood, and the last one to your forward base location, so that all of your settlers are either on wood, food, or are either on wood or food. Ideally, you want to set up your forward base location next to one of your trade posts. This results in us having 6 to 7 on food and 9 to 10 on wood. Once you have 200 wood, have your explorer build the second trade post, and then move him over to the third and have him stand by. Now, once you get 100 more wood, construct a house. Make sure you have villagers queued as well, don't forget about that. I usually queue 3 to start for when I reach Age 2. Once you hit Age 2, send 700 coin without delay. You should also have enough wood to build a hospital at your forward location, so do so. Set 2 villagers to collect the wood crates, and take several of your vills off wood and onto food, leaving only 4 to 5 on wood. As soon as your hospital is up, queue a sentinel. Then use 200 wood to construct your third trade post with your grandmaster, and use the other 200 wood from your age up, along with 200 food, to research Stagecoach. Keep making houses every time you get enough wood to do so. Remember to return to your hospital and fill. Remember to return now to your hospital and fill that sentinel to 5 sentinel, a full 5 sentinel batch before they finish. Sentinels cost 40 coin each, so a full batch of 5 costs 200 coin. This is why we gathered that exact amount earlier. By now, your 700 coin shipment has arrived, so collect and use that coin to train your Sentinels for the time being, so you can focus fully on wood and food. Queue another batch. If your macro and housing is on point, you should be able to complete 2 full consecutive batches without going idle on your TC and have 10 Sentinels. It's very tight, however, so it may take some practice to do so quickly. Stagecoach should arrive any second. The moment it does, set all of your trade posts to wood and move all your woodcutter villagers over to coin, having 4 to 5 on coin and everyone else on food. Your next cart is Wignacourt Constructions. Use your wood income to buy houses, more trading posts, outposts, and a church. The order of which is all at your discretion and judgment for when you feel like you need them. You want to build your outposts close to your trade posts so that you can defend the trade posts easier and have more map control and stat aura for your Sentinels. Now, this is the build order's beginning, and it's a lot of moving parts and changing steps. This makes up all the parts of the build order that are 100% mandatory, and from here the build order is up to how you want to take it. Let's go over the deck and we'll talk about some of the cards. Besides the cards already mentioned, also present in Age 2 is Papal Bull. This is a card that you are going to want to send relatively early in the game, as it's your unique church tech, and one of the unique church upgrades grants your Sentinels their stat boost aura from enemy buildings instead of just yours. This card is a must-have, as the necessity of the aura is the one thing preventing you from being aggressive into your opponent's forward or their base. I usually send this card after Wignacourt Constructions, like Wignacourt Constructions, Papal Bull, boom, boom. Also located in Age 2 is Advanced Arsenal, which is actually not a terrible choice, as you'll have a lot of wood to use at this strategy and can easily spare some for an arsenal, even if you'll be using all of your wood throughout the whole strat. One of the cheapest upgrades at the arsenal is Socket Bayonet, which increases Musketeers' melee damage by 20%. This only costs 200 resources and affects our Sentinels a lot, considering they have a very high hand attack. They're practically halberdiers with a gun attack. Now, I know a lot of you are already probably typing in the comments that Sentinels don't gain benefit from Socket Bayonet, but think again. This was actually an undocumented change that happened with the last update a few days ago, and they actually benefit from it now. In fact, if you get Socket Bayonet and the one that boosts Gunpowder Unit attack, you can actually get Sentinels all the way up to 27 hand attack in Age 2, so long as they have their building aura. It's kind of crazy, actually. They're ridiculously high damage in melee. Additionally, due to their faster movement speed, they gain more benefit from drummers and become the fastest non-mercenary musketeers in the game. They're really good. Irish Brigadiers got nerfed, but I still like the card for the deck simply because it's a very large amount of units in the same archetype as your Sentinels, and they can really help boost the size of your mass for very little trouble. But this is more of an open card for you to do whatever you want. The last very noteworthy card in Age 2 is Hospitality, a much-needed card in many a Malta deck. This allows us to go to Age 3 quickly and research Veteran Sentinels extremely cheaply. This card is a much-needed addition, as at some point you are going to want to age with this build. Since Age 3 is where Sentinels really start to scale hard and become stat monsters instead of being slightly better than a normal Musketeer, we want to get to Age 3 at a reasonable time. I generally like to start aging at around the 12 to 14 minute mark. I recommend when you do age 2-3 that you do so with the Bishop for the extra town center, for obvious reasons. In pretty much every game I do this strategy, Malta Infantry Combat is like the first card I send in Age 3. As that and Veterancy make your Sentinels just take off, since both upgrades scale with the aura boost, it just really affects them quite a bit. Other noteworthy cards in the deck include Vittoriosa, a staple Malta card that should be in most, if not all, Malta decks. Spanish Tongue, which grants you a unit that will serve as an answer to Skirmisher Masses. and Duredin Towers, a very solid card for the strategy that ships 2 outposts and allows outposts to train all of your infantry. Critically, that means that the Sentinel's ability to make outposts is now an ability to make blockhouses that can train more Sentinels as well as give them their aura. And they can also train fire throwers without you having to make an artillery foundry, which is pretty cool. When you go to Age 4, you're going to want to age with the Pope for 1000 XP. In our Age 4 cards, we can see Silicon Supply, the Factory, Flintlock Rockets, which is usually the first card I send in Age 4, Russian Tongue. Also present is Rockets, the card for fire throwers. Adding fire throwers to your unit comp can really boost you over the edge with this strategy. They go well with the Sentinels, since the Sentinels will help take care of the cavalry. The fire throwers barely require any extra investment, since they benefit from the advanced arsenal and Malta infantry combat you probably already sent. So really all they need is Veterancy Guard and this card, and they're caught up. That's nothing. From here, I'm basically done, and we'll spend the rest of the video going over the game shown in the footage in more detail. I told you that a lot of my Malta build orders were going to be a little bit more simple, since it's more about how to start a strategy and how to fight with it, rather than achieving a specific win con like Fast Top Hats or Marines is. Okay, from here the video is unscripted, and I'm just going to talk over the game. I think there's still merit to this, though. The video just kind of turned out to be a little shorter than most of my build order guides, and I didn't want to short you guys some of that, so here we are. We're starting kind of in the middle of the game. You know, we're about 13 minutes in. My enemy has destroyed the trading post on the south side, and they just had a failed raid attempt come in for those settlers, and we're just trying to build up our military right here. I have a Dutch ally who is spamming the Dutch skirmisher, very famous unit, naturally, and I'm shipping the Irish Brigadiers. We know the enemy has Jaegers, and they also have Banditos, so I'm also trying to train some Hussar, which is the reason you see that commandery built up in the background, is it's about to get some Hussar queued. Additionally, we also see that the Crusader Knights tech is being upgraded at the church. Crusader Knights being the tech that allows us to get our boost from other buildings that I mentioned before. Now here, just an absolute fuckload of units descended upon a rather large part of my economy. I went from 31 down to 18 villagers in this encounter here in total, when all was said and done. But we started to push in. As you can see, I have Hussar trained. The Sentinels are being frontline tanks, just trying to be in the way of the Chinaco and the Insurgentes to keep them away from our skirmisher mass. The Irish Brigadiers just came in. Now, the Irish Brigadiers do have some extra HP because our Dutch friend sent the Team Infantry HP card, which is a very, very nice card, I must say, considering that it scales with the aura boost just like everything else does. Any kind of team card that affects Sentinels just affects them to a ridiculous extent. I tried to chase these skirmishers, but got caught out by the Dragoons, and so I pulled the Hussars back to try to deal with the other things. And we don't chase them too much further before we realize it's a bad idea and back off. After a little bit, we decided to push in on the enemy's trade post, just because I had sent Stagecoach, and therefore I want to deny the enemies the trade post so that they don't get the benefit that I get from it. Insurgentes coming from the right, just some random cavalry schmuck gonna die in the middle. Down goes the trade post nice and quick. What's nice about the Irish Brigadiers is that they have quite a bit more HP than quite a bit more siege damage than the Sentinels. So we're just attacking a Ville, and then we're just kind of backing away and letting the skirmisher player do his skirmisher thing. I tried to come back in and out a little bit, just here and there, try to take some focus off of my ally and see if I can snag a war wagon or two. Unfortunately, 'tis not to be. Jaegers are absolutely terrifying units, and you have to be super careful around them because they'll just take away. They'll just snipe you out like it's no big deal. Both of our enemies went very heavy on the skirmishers this game, and so a lot of the game was actually my ally being the core fighting force of our army, just doing the skirm wars, while I was more of a support force keeping the musketeers off him. But not all games end up being like this when you're doing this kind of strategy. It really depends on what the enemies do, and in this case, both of our enemies went super heavy on the skirmishers, but they still made enough cavalry that it necessitated going heavy infantry or making some form of anti-cav. They actually had quite the varied unit roster, a lot more than us, I would say. We just had really good micro to help deal with that lack of unit roster. As you can see, I just started aging to 3. I'm aging up with the bishop, and I haven't really stopped training sentinels at this point. I'm back up to 23 vills, nowhere near what I was at before. That attack really did hurt my economy a lot, but I've gathered back up to the point where I was before. When that happened, when I was during my recovery period, I switched both of my... I switched a couple settlers to wood, so I'd still have wood production, but then switched all of my trade posts over to food, along with most of my villagers, so that I could actually recover my economy rather rapidly. So here we go. After they destroyed that trade post down in the south and that big push from the south, they actually built their own trade post there. So when we pulled out of the enemy's base, I ran my units over to that trade post to resurrect my explorer and get him to destroy this trade post and build a new one on it, so I can retake the control. There's my age 3. We aged up fast due to the hospitality card. And as soon as we get this next card here, you're going to see that we're going to send Malta, the Malta combat card, which is a very good card to help scale with your sentinels. It's a very good scaling card. You see, there's the veterancy upgrade being researched, and there's the Malta combat card, literally just like one right after the other. Jumping ahead a couple of seconds, our veterancy is just about to come in, and boom, now we have 238 hit points, and after a little bit that Malta combat card is going to come in. These affects the sentinels so much, just because of the scaling aura that they have, and they're not even near an outpost right now. This is just the smaller version of the aura that comes from being near the trade post that I have, that I built there on the enemies. You'll see now we have 265 hit points, and we don't even have the full bonus. You can see I'm trying to run around my hussars to over to the skirms, but they just kind of had pathing hell and got stuck. Unfortunately, they pretty much all died before they could really accomplish anything. Those war wagons playing a big part of that. Now, there are a whole bunch of skirmishers here, and it's not wise for me to be on the front lines like I was. So I did realize that and moved back a bit, but I was trying to take some pot shots off of some of the war wagons. But now I've moved back, and I'm trying to specifically target down all of these Ulans so that we can keep the skirmisher mass fresh and alive, since that is where most of the power comes from. Something I've noticed a lot with the Sentinels is that they make a lot more smoke when they shoot their gun than other gun units. It feels like anytime my Sentinels fire, they just have a shit ton of smoke that just fills up the screen and makes it hard to see what's going on. It's kind of funny, actually. You saw some Chinacos peeking in from the right. But we've mostly taken control of this part of the map right here. And as you can see, I'm using that Sentinel ability to make an outpost so that I can get the full benefit from all of my from that aura boost. We're also building some Sentinels along the front lines so we can have a larger forward base, and we're training just a couple more Hussar as well. Training out of 2 town centers. Our Dutch player is overextending just a teensy bit, but it looks like he managed to get away with it. Our outpost is up, And I'm now sending Deredden Towers. This is the card that I was mentioning earlier. That allows you to get outposts and the ability to train units from them. You'll see this later, but when this card arrives, I decided to build them down south by the river, by that southern trading post, so that I could train from 2 points in the map, and that I would be able to spot any kind of attempt to flank us from the south side like they did before, which is kind of the idea there. Now, this was kind of a funny but not so great moment in the game. Our friendly Dutch player overextended too far with his skirmishers right into this batch of Chinako, so naturally I tried to move in my Sentinels to help take care of it, because Chinako are like one of the best cav in the game, but his mass kept getting fucked up by the trade post and this tree, and so they couldn't move out, and so he ended up just having to like stand and shoot, and he lost well over half of his mass, and this put us on the back foot for quite a while here, just because of a weird pathing issue with the trees. Very, very unfortunate thing to happen here. And now all the Chinako are cleared out, but my Sentinels are fighting on the front lines in front of a whole bunch of skirmishers, and that's not good either. Now, both of us made some pretty hefty mistakes in this part. I'm trying to back out my units, as you can see. But it's just so costly. We've made some big errors here and lost a very hefty chunk of our mass. We're getting the Hussar in just to chase the enemy around a bit, make them back up a bit. But these are skirmishers, and they are able to fight cavalry relatively well just through hit-and-run tactics once they get to a mass big enough like this. So that was really mostly just of a, like, we need space to back up kind of thing. Unfortunately, we didn't actually use that opportunity to back up, and we're pretty much right back to square one. This was just kind of a micro-disaster from both me and the Dutch guy here. Mr. Lesbian Fisting Sex. Yes, that is his username. We're producing out of 3 hospitals at the moment, and we're just trying to like slowly back up. I don't know what I'm doing here. I think I lost this entire mass because I was trying to fix some macro shenanigans, and I wasn't paying attention to the battle, and that's what you get whenever you're fighting a battle. This is probably one of my like biggest flaws in this game is I am always quick to try to fix my eco whenever I see that little red banner appear saying I have an idle villager. Even if it means looking away from the screen from the battle, and that is probably one of my biggest flaws in this game. Over in the top of the screen here, we can see that there's an Insurgente raid going along, just trying to destroy some of the trade posts. I asked Mr. Lesbian Fisting Sex here if he could create a barracks up by that trading post and stop that from happening. Meanwhile, he's built some cannons that we can help push with, and I'm just basically continuing to mass Sentinels because we need some form of anti-cavalry here. I'm also training Sentinels out of the barracks, and we just shipped the Cassador tongue. Now, this card, I have since changed the deck from this game into what you saw in the deck video, but originally I had the Cassadors instead of the Spanish Lancers, but I kind of had this aha moment where I was like, the fuck do I need Cassadors for? I already beat most of the Musketeers in this game, and my units can fight against Dragoons. What I need is like some kind of anti-infantry, so I wised up and swapped it out for the Spanish Lancers. But, you know, for what they are, the Cassadors are pretty neat. They have a lot of range resistance, and so they can help tank against some of these skirmishers here. But now that the cannons are in, we have, I think, 5 falconets here, and so we make the call to push. Meanwhile, those 2 Deredden Towers that I made earlier trains these units down here so that I could siege down this trade post during the push, and get my Explorer, you can see him over on the top there, to come down and rebuild the new one, so I have full control of the trade line. So now we're coming in. I'm doing my job of trying to focus down all of the cavalry. Here comes the Chinako mass. He's doing his best to just ignore my troops and get around to the cannons, which is exactly what he should be doing. That's kind of what you want to do with cavalry in this scenario, is just get them to get them to connect with the cannons at any cost. Meanwhile, they actually have a couple cannons of their own, and this was a very good defense on their part. They pretty much got all of our cannons by this point, except for I think 1 at the top there. And both of his cannons are actually very difficult to see because of the tree, but I do spot them, with my mass, and so come in and try to take down both of these cannons before moving out before we move out. Before we move out, I said in post-production. Okay, in actuality, I saw this culverin before I left. Now I'm moving out. Our push failed. It's time to retreat and recover. We need to cut our losses. Alright, skipped ahead a little bit. We've recovered our army, but the enemy knows that we are hurting a little bit because they took out a big chunk of our military, and they're using the opportunity, as they should, to push in on us. They just took down one of my trade posts, and they're going to be pushing in with everything they have here. Now, we need to be very careful because we know that they have cannons from what we saw earlier. We know they have at least one culverin and a couple falconets that they're going to be pushing in with. We also have this big skirmisher mass here, so we reposition our armies so that my Sentinel are behind the skirmishers, and I'm just keeping them here on standby, waiting for the enemy cavalry to move in. Here come the falconets from the bottom side, which is not a good thing. They're starting to siege down all of my hospitals and my production buildings. I'm currently going up to the industrial age, however, and that's when we're really going to start seeing these high-scaling troops from the Sentinels, the Sentinel magic. Just trying to train whatever I can, you know. I see the cav coming in, so I bring in my Sentinels again to help support the skirmisher mass. Pretty much everything. This is pretty much a skirm war with support units. It's not always the case with this strategy. But like when the enemy is massing skirms, you need to rely on your opponent to also mass skirms in the skirm war. And so that's just kind of what we had to do. You know, it is what it is. But we fought. We delayed them. We dealt some damage to their skirm mass. We kept doing trades and trades and trades, but now it's time to back up. You know, that forward base is completely lost. So up next in my Age 4 cards, you can see I have a card, is the Flintlock Rockets. This card boosts the Sentinels by 35%, as well as their cost by 35%, and it also adds to them a charge attack. We're also already halfway done researching the guard upgrade. I'm currently just trying to train as many Sentinels as I can before the Flintlock Rockets arrive, and I'm trying to keep from losing any of my Sentinels before the guard upgrade arrives. And then when all of this arrives, we're going to make like one big push, and that's going to be the beginning of the end for the enemies. Our card has officially arrived. Look at that, 406 HP, and they're not even under an outpost. So now their guard, they are as carded as they could possibly be at this point, and we're just running in. We're just going in on them. They now have access to a charge action that recovers relatively quickly, actually, and does it has splash damage and siege damage. So the siege getting around the range resistance will kind of allow these Sentinels to fight against their counters relatively well. And by this point, their stats are so high that I can just kind of fight falconets and win. So we see that they have four falconets over there, and I just left the skirm mass to the other skirm mass and just went over to the falconets and challenged them directly with all of my mass. And see, that's 3 falconets gone, and there's the 4th. All 4 falconets dead. Now we're running over to the other side here to catch the Chinako before they connect with the skirmishers, while letting the skirmishers fight and deal with the enemy skirmishers. It really is a skirm war with other units that's going on right here. And this kind of is the beginning of the end. We start pushing and pushing and pushing because our Sentinels have hit their huge power spike, and we have quite the mass of them, and we are keeping production out of them as well. We have 35 right here, and that's enough to push anybody back. I mean, just look at these guys. They don't have any kind of ore bonus right now, but they have 379 HP. And I mean, that was pretty much the end of it. We kind of just muscled our way in once I had those carded Age 4 stats, and that was pretty much the end of the game. There was one moment where I accidentally shipped my factory up to the front lines instead of the back of my base, and the wagon got caught by a Nulon raid. But other than that, that was about it. Have a great day. Thank you guys for watching, and goodbye. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. This was, as ever, a ton of fun to make. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out, and have a great day.